Also from Facebook, for everyone on the panel, if you could have one of Superman's powers, what would it be and why?
Flight.
Go right down the line there.
But I've often said, not one of his powers, but one of the maxims: truth, justice, and the American way.
Flight sounds like a good one. I'd get around a lot quicker. Would have really helped in the days when I had to commute to Burbank for meetings all the time.
X-ray vision.
Superman had a power in the 1950s which he doesn't have anymore, to shoot tiny little Supermen out of his hand. This is real. This actually happened in a story where it's called Superman's New Power, and he develops the ability to shoot a tiny little version of himself out of his hand. And while this thing's flying around, Superman has no powers and he's got nothing to do. And he gets really angry about this little version of himself because it's getting all the fame and the renown. And the whole story is just about his anger about this tiny little version of himself. So honestly, that's the power I want.
I'd probably want the power to have great hair all the time. That'd be the best power.
Your hair is brilliant. Look what I've got.
Not quite sure. I guess I work in comics, so I'm always facing deadlines like Paul as well. I guess spinning around the world super fast and turning back time, that would probably be a pretty good one. Like a killing in the stock market. So.
Do we know what Superman is like in bed?
I don't personally.
Larry Niven wrote an essay called Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex. I think that's
The bottom line is gentle.
I remember as a kid they used to have these ads in the back of comics that you could get these glasses that had X-ray vision. So I always thought about that, but I think it would have to be flight. That's the coolest.
I have to pick one that hasn't been taken yet. He supposedly has super intelligence, like he can learn a language in 5 minutes. I always kind of liked freeze breath. Not one we've seen much of.
Probably, I was like, oh, what do I choose? Well, I gotta say, the one power which I would choose, which I wish I had, which is probably the one thing which really ties him to humanity, is his unbreakable spirit. It's the one thing that he has that real connection with humankind with. And yeah, all the others are great, but it's his unbreakable spirit which is what I admire him most for.
From Twitter, Henry.
Oh, joy.
Yeah. They feed them to me. I don't get the choice.
Yeah, okay.
What was your favorite part of the physical aspect of becoming Superman?
How do I say this? You know what? Getting in that kind of shape was incredibly hard work, and it was, you know, a gruel and a slog every day to get up at 3 in the morning and train before work, and it would ultimately end up being a 15-hour day. It was exhausting, but I got to be in that kind of shape. I had an amazing trainer in Mark Twight, and when you are feeling that strong, it's a good feeling, I'm not going to lie. And, you know, you feel very fit and healthy, and so just that feeling of health and fitness, and yeah, that was probably the best part of it, just feeling healthy.
Woo!
Thank you.
I have to vouch, you were actually presenting the actual #1 comic book at a party last night, and we're next to each other in line, and I had my arm around his waist, and ladies, fabulous, fabulous. great, man.
I'll tell a funny anecdote. I brought my sons on the set when it was going. I don't know if you remember this, but I timed it so that Henry would be in the costume when my kids were on the set, and I've been saying, yeah, I work with Superman. And she's like, no, you don't. So my now 6-year-old was, I don't know, 4 and a half, and we went on set, and his cape a lot of the time was digital. So Henry was in the costume. But my son introduced to Henry and said, hey, this is Superman. And he looked at him and he said, no, you're not. Where's your cape? He was like, he's not Superman.
I proved him wrong, though.
Yeah.
Hey, you comics artists and writers, do you have a favorite moment during the evolution of Superman over these many years? And do you see where we might be going next?
Just, there's so much. It's so hard to pick a moment. For me, I think it's where I come in. You know, if I could freeze frame a moment, I'd be sitting there as a 6-year-old watching Jack and George and Noel on Channel 11 after school with an open comic book that I just managed to get from a babysitter, telling a story of Superman at the end of the future with a drying up Earth, and my eyes wide. Look at how much magic can be going on all at the same time. How much imagination can be there. It's the moment where he collides with my life. That's what I'd love to recreate.
I think mine would be a little bit similar in that I think back to it, and what I always remember are the individual covers on the stands and the color that was there. And one of the things that always seemed to be present was this sense of nobility and majesty that went with the character, and somehow that seems to translate through anyone who draws it when they do it properly. And it's more the sense of Superman than a particular visual itself.
I guess for me, I kind of like all the versions of Superman. You know, like Batman, this is a character that's so malleable that we've seen a dozen different takes on it over the decades. You know, as Jim said, in the initial version, he was very much a rough working man who was fighting for poor people in the times of the Depression. In the 40s, he's a patriot. In the 50s, he's kind of like the guys who come home from war and trying to set up homes and have families. So in the 50s, Superman's surrounded by, you know, Supergirl and Superdog and all his relatives and friends from the future. Again, in the 60s, he's Cosmic Seeker. So I think the real Superman is a combination of all of those things. And when we talk about where he is now, you know, we've been through a lot of different recent versions of Superman. And the kind of, in 2005, or at that time after 9/11, there was a kind of messianic Superman, and it was playing up the Jesus aspect and the sky god aspect. What we're seeing now is a much more human Superman, which I think is interesting. It's as humans and the idea of the superhuman get closer together, Superman becomes more like us, we become more like him. And I think that's what we're seeing in the new movie. We're really seeing, there's almost a point of contact that's happening here. And Superman's much more reflective of how we all feel, and he's trying to deal with problems that we have to deal with as well. So I kind of see that, that's the evolution of that. I mean, you have to talk to these guys about what they're doing next, but the evolution that I think will be a much more humanistic Superman, and a Superman that we can all almost reach out and touch and become that character.
Very quickly, I would also highly recommend The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. When I was in college, that's what inspired me to become a comic book professional, and that it really took what I thought were traditional stories and brought a whole different level of sophistication to them. He really represented Batman and Superman as almost these elemental forces that were representing all these different things, things that were very current in the 80s. And in a way, Superman kind of lost his way a bit and was working for the Reagan administration. And at the end, I don't want to spoil it, but basically Superman and Batman fight at the end. And I always thought Superman kind of got robbed a little bit, and it'd be great to see a rematch between the two of them. I don't know, maybe on screen, I don't know, something.
I've been busy today, running around picking the brain and stuff like that. David, anything interesting happened today? Any announcements?
So over in Hall H at the Warner Brothers, I guess most people know now, at the end of the Warner Brothers panel, Zach came out and he brought out Harry Lennox, who plays General Swanwick in Man of Steel, and we, actually Henry read a bit from Superman Returns, and so the next film we're making, we're already in pre-production, comes out in summer of 2015, and we're actually not sure whether the title is Superman versus Batman or Batman versus Superman, but yes, it's that rematch, that combination, the two guys on screen, and that's happening. I also have to say, I grew up reading these comics and read The Dark Knight Returns when it came out, and never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I'd be, writing Batman, blah, 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 Superman, blah, 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 blah. That's crazy.
And I'm safe to say it now, I'm Batman.
No, I'm
That's not the only exciting thing going on coming up. As of today, to celebrate the 75th anniversary, DC Comics is launching an uber cool project called the Superman Real Heroes Project. Anyone ever heard of this? Oh, it's behind me, isn't that great? So you will be able to, fans are invited to tell their stories about friends, about family members. You talk about a stranger you met on the street. Everybody who has, you want to talk about people who embody the traits of Superman himself. Strength, hope, power, optimism. And it's available today. RealHeroesProject.org. You can upload your story. They'll be doing them, there'll be new ones every week for some time to come from the Man of Steel cast. Henry's apparently has been uploaded today.
It has.
Don't you remember?
I do. Oh yeah, of course.
It was a good story. It touched my heart. I love it. And join fans around the world in the Man of Steel cast. So please jump on board. Hail some friends, hail some family members, the people who embody Superman in your life. Good thing. Anybody have any questions? Oh, wait, I've got 15 minutes of questions from Twitter. All right, you keep those questions respectable. Be nice. Henry's not kissing anyone today. Grant might. Microphone. Volume. It's on now.
Okay, this is for Henry. And when you got the call from Zack Snyder, you were playing a role-playing game.
Yes.
Have you gotten back on it, and what level are you in?
Actually, I have not gotten back into it. I've had no time, and as I think anyone who knows that game in particular knows that it becomes a bit of an addiction, and I need to sleep so I can work.
Was it Minecraft?
No.
Hi, I'm Scott. Just wondering, comic book wise, how do you guys feel about how dark Superman's getting nowadays? Killing Dr. Light, Injustice. Just how do you guys feel about that?
He's just reflecting a general tendency, as he always does. I mean, Superman has to deal with how people are feeling, and right now we're in a kind of dystopian atmosphere in the West, and Superman's having to reflect that and deal with it. So I think it's an inevitable part of his development through history, that these are the things he has to handle. If he's dark now, it's because we're all a little bit dark,
My name is Marilyn, and I'm 80 years old. And I also had the very first comic book of Superman. And I was very ill, and everybody would bring me a comic book, and that's how I learned to read. And I passed that information on to my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and I appreciate all the work that you do, and I hope you'll continue on with that theory of what the first idea of Superman was. And I appreciate all of you. You're marvelous. Keep up the great, great work.
This is for Tim Daly. One of my favorite episodes is an episode where Superman's fighting Doomsday, and he does what's called a cardboard speech. It's very popular. You find it on the internet all the time. And I'm curious about is how much input you as an actor have into that speech. How much of it all comes from the writers? Is it interactive, or is it just it's your script? They give you the script and that's it.
I really have to give all the credit to the writers. They're the ones that spend the grueling hours thinking about the role and the story and how best to manifest Superman. And I show up, to do the voice, which is, by comparison, an incredibly easy job. So it's my job to fulfill the story that they've created, but it's the writers.
Hi, my name's Keith. In my man cave at home, I have a statue of Christopher Reeve, which I think is a name to be mentioned in this panel here today. I was just wondering, for all the panel, whoever wants to respond, is there a keepsake or something from the sets or something from your experience with Superman that maybe you have in your home?
Good question.
I have another Reeve. My mother met George Reeve when she was a little girl, and I have an autographed photo of my mom from George Reeve that's in my office, which is kind of cool.
Henry, did you keep anything?
I wasn't allowed to actually keep anything because it was all under lock and key. And so instead, I had something made, which was a replica of the key, which I have, the command key, which I wear. And I had a replica made, and I gave it to 4 of my friends as well, who were closest in my life. And yeah, so that's what I kept.
But Henry also made, for all the crew, which was incredibly classy, a commemorative coin, sort of Superman coin for the cast and crew of the film, which is amazing.
I knew Chris. He was a friend of mine, and I'm so glad you brought him up because he was a great guy and a wonderful representation of Superman. So I think we should give him a hand. The keepsake I have is a cell from the animation. Do you know what a cell is? It's the celluloid, whatever it's called. That plastic stuff that they draw on. That's my keepsake. But also, some of you may know that I do a web series called The Daily Show. With my son, and there's a little Superman that's kind of squishy, that doesn't really look like Superman, that appears magically in all these different shots that we do in our silly little web series. And by the way, we have a new Daily Show premiering soon with a lot of former Supermen who will be guest stars in that show.
I have an eraser from a page I drew, Superman Unchained, Unbound.
Well, I don't have the keepsake anymore, but there was a lunch in New York. You were there, Paul, when the Smithsonian said they were going to put my bow tie from the Superman show in the Smithsonian, and there were several executives from Time Warner there, and I said to the guy from the Smithsonian, I said, "Where are you going to get the bow tie?" And he said, "Oh, Warner Brothers is going to give it to us." I said, "They don't have it."
So how about that?
Perfect. My favorite keepsake is I have a brick from Jerry Siegel's house from when the writers and artists, I think Jim and Dan probably contributed art to be auctioned off for people to have the house refurbished so the house where Superman was first thought of could be repaired. And Brad Meltzer, whose idea that project was, got to walk up to the people who were living in the house and say, "Excuse me, did you know you're living in the place where Superman was created, and we'd like to fix your house so it's perfect and modern." And that was a great moment.
My name is Tom. Henry and Dylan, you were both great. David, I loved the script. The adoption angle really resonated with me. Were you caught off guard by the backlash of the ending, since there was a precedent of Superman killing Zod in Superman 2 and in the comics?
Yes, there was a precedent, but having said that, to a certain extent, Superman, at least cinematically, hadn't really been reinvented since the Donner films, and we knew that as much as we love the Donner films, our version of the Man of Steel was a lot of people were going to embrace, and some people were going to shock. So to a certain extent, we expected that, but yeah, I mean, John Byrne had done it with Zod and Donner before, and it is what it is. But Zach has spoken about this, and we will be dealing with it in the coming film. That in a way, this film is really Superman. One of the reasons we didn't call it Superman, we called it Man of Steel, is we could have called it Superman Begins. And that moment that Henry...
That was done.
Yeah. That was saying but that moment that Henry expressed so beautifully in the film, the anguish after having done it, is one of the things Zach has said publicly is, we will pick up from that. He's not Superman fully formed in this film. He becomes that in the next film, and he will have to deal with the repercussions of that in the next film.
How you doing there? My name is Christopher. I'm a firefighter up in Northern California, and as firefighters, we have the inspiration that Superman has brought us, the morals, the ethics, the values. How do you guys as writers and as creative personnel, how do you tackle those issues? Are they still relevant today? Is it more of a hindrance, or is it something that you use as kind of like you said, an inspiration? How do you work with Superman's beliefs and his belief system?
I think you have to take it very seriously and elevate yourself into his way of thinking, because ultimately what Superman represents is the best in all of us. We all have that under a shirt somewhere. Superman's maybe 24 hours a day, he's better at it than all of us. But really what he's all about is that indomitable spirit, as Henry said, is that part of humanity that does not give in and that still believes in us and tries to do the best. So I think you have to elevate yourself to that, and you can't really drag that down. You have to take that very seriously as the most important aspect of Superman. So that's how I certainly feel about that.
Jerry, David?
Look, yeah, Henry touched upon this. It can be paralyzing as a writer, to sit down and say, wow, you've literally got the weight of, he's the most recognized figure in the world, and so many people aspire to be him, and he represents so many things, and it can be hard to write a character that is an icon. And so when I was writing, we tried to humanize him. It's tricky knowing that, I remember Chris Nolan once saying when we were working with Batman that you can't write your Batman movie or your Superman movie. You have to sort of honor the icon and be aware of the fact that you're sort of working in service for something much bigger. So we're always weighing that with every line of dialogue, every action, knowing that it's going to send ripples throughout the world.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Henry, I'm going to hit you up later, but I'd like to see if I can get something signed for the firehouse, if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
Can I do that right now? Can I walk up there and do that right now?
Let's get a...
All right.
No, yeah.
This is going to be awesome.
Give me that, get away.
the firefighters, and he's the only firefighter in the room, right? Good. Okay, let's ask that next question while Henry's signing.
I just generally wanted to thank you guys all for the contributions you've given over the years to Superman to get to the point where it is now and to give us a movie like Man of Steel that's just so on point for what we've always wanted to see in a Superman film. And then I had a question for Henry, more or less about your diet and your training. I recently did like a 2 or 3 week no carbs just to kind of get in shape for this event. It sucks. I understand what you went through. What did you hate the most about your dieting? I know you were contractually obligated to do that. And what did you enjoy the most about just stuffing your face with carbs at the end?
The thing the dieting bit, I was in such good hands with Mark Twight and Mike Blevins. Thank you, when it came to the leaning stuff, they had me primed and everything, and yes, they cut out a lot of carbs from my diet and to prep me for the shirtless scenes. The most difficult thing was just that it was over a 6-week period that we were staying lean, and so instead of it being just for one day, like bodybuilders do, and you stand under a nice light and you get a spray tan, I had to maintain that and still work long hours and still get up in the morning and train, and that was probably my least favorite thing. But at the end of that, I did get the chance. Zach and Debbie Snyder bought me an apple pie from a local pie company and a tub of ice cream, and then I ordered a big 16-inch pizza on top of that and nailed the whole thing.
All right, we have to stop. I know we could go all night, but people have flights to take and places to go, and I have to have dinner. So I want you all to give a little round of applause to Mattel and Warner Brothers Consumer Products for the goodies you just got. Mattel Quick Shot. Do not rush the stage. There will be no autographs, no photos. They will be walking out that way. Jim and Tim are signing autographs down in the DC booth at 5:45, I believe. So you'll get that opportunity. Henry's not signing, don't ask. I know there's no more firefighters, but I do want you to give a round of applause for Paul Levitz, Jack Larson, Dan Jurgens, Molly Quinn, Grant Morrison, Dylan Sprayberry, Jim Lee, Tim Daly, David Goyer, and Henry Cavill. We leave now. Thank you, everybody.
You should take a picture of
They're all right here outside 5X. That's awesome. Perfect.